Yes.
It will get better. Nothing ever stays the same.
And that is a true principle. Okay, that's life. It doesn't stay the same. And I believe if we don't sabotage ourselves, that it will get better, right? And yes, we do sabotage ourselves, but if we would do our best to not sabotage ourselves, it will get better. And you know, I wish I could say I just had one dark time, okay, but there's been several, and some referred that dark time as the dark night of the soul, and my last dark night of the soul, I couldn't figure out any way to make it better. I couldn't buy my way out. I couldn't think my way out. I couldn't leverage my way out. The odds were stacked up against me, and the powers to be that were opposing me seemed to be bigger. Does that anybody ever felt like that? It was the David and Goliath type of deal, and I was, be frankly honest, I was used to being able to manage my way through stuff, right? Because that's the way we survivors are, right? And then here I am, and that was dear to me appeared it was all going to be lost. Now I've talked about this before, but I guess this is the night, if that's all right. And it's been on my mind lately that it looked like to me that my integrity, that was precious to me, was going to be destroyed. Not because of necessarily anything that I had done, but according to what people said that I hadn't done. Does that make sense? And that may not even be so, because I had reports of just because they didn't want me to be, okay. And I've had that happen in the past for some reason. Sometimes, there's been times in my life that I just felt like I was a target, and the fact of it is, sometimes if you are interested in pushing forward in life, yes, sometimes people will shoot at you because that makes them feel better about themselves. I'm thinking, okay. So anyway, but to bring this last one to a result, and it was close to Christmas. In fact, I think it was the Sunday before Christmas, and I thought, just like Apostle Paul said, I thought I was going to die. Actually, I thought my good name was going to die, which to me was like personal death, and there was no way out of it. But I was in that place, and for some reason I had this thought. And the thought was, since I can't do anything about it, why don't I give God a chance? And I thought, well, okay, why not? Why not give him a chance? I said, God, I surrender. I give it over to you. I'm going to trust you for it. I don't see how you can do it. I mean, if I can't do it, surely God's not able to, right? Isn't that what we say? But I went on and I said, okay, I'll give this a chance. I will surrender to God. And the next thought was, I said, I will trust you. And then my next question was, well, who was I trusting before? Well, I was trusting me mainly, right? And at that time but then I realized something happened inside of me. I really did, because it hit me that he can see things that I can't see, and he can do things that I can't do, even though I couldn't see what he could do. And emotionally, I felt better. I didn't know how it was going to work out, but I was trusting him. And yes, it did work out because things that I could not see started happening. Pieces started falling into place. And it worked out. Yes.
I think a lot of times, and it's not just this, but I think most of the time when we fall into self-sabotage, I don't think we plan it. I mean, sometimes I planned it because I was afraid of moving forward because that was the
Yes.
thing. But a lot of times, what leads you to self-sabotage is fear.
Right. Absolutely.
And fear can be powerful. And like a lot of things that Paul shared, with the fear of failure and loss of who he was as a man and how he provided and what he liked those things about himself.
That was his story about himself.
And that fear, fear is a powerful thing, and it can get us to do almost anything.
And tragedy is, see, we only know what we know. We don't know what we don't know because we don't see all the possibilities in the future. All we do is see all the things that we thought of, which those fearful thoughts that are pushing us to sabotage ourselves if we're not careful. And actually, I was thinking about this today. I had the same forces come against me again about a year and a half ago. And actually, they took me to court. And I remember sitting in court, and I knew that the odds, again, were stacked against me. And I'd hired a lawyer, gave him quite a bit of money. I was hoping that he could do something, but I knew that it was the forces were against me. And I sat there, and even though I knew that things looked bad, and I could see how they could play out real easy, right? What we're talking about. But I went on and stayed in the process. And one of the guys that was working for me, he was talking about sabotage a minute ago, I wouldn't react, okay, to what was going on. But then, so they switched over to him. And they started pushing him, and he wasn't nearly as emotionally adept as maybe I am. Okay, is that saying it nicely? And they started pushing him and really going after him, and finally I just told him, I said, "You just need to be quiet." And he did. He apologized later. He said, "Well, they just started doing that," and he said, I can take it when they're just talking about me, but when they're talking about you, that really," and I said, it's okay. We just need to be quiet. But my point of the story I want to tell right here, and I haven't mentioned any names, and that's the way I'm going to keep it, because I watched God move, because I saw the judge leaning the direction of the prosecutor, and then all of a sudden he found a flaw in what they were trying to do, and then he started looking at stuff, and things started turning, and I saw it turn, and it did turn. But if we'd have sabotaged it, it wouldn't have made any difference. We wouldn't have got to that place. Does that make sense? And so finally, when it came down to it, he went too far in my favor, really, and he backed up a little bit and gave them a chance to reclaim and gave them a time limit to do that. And for some reason, well, I know there are several reasons. There were too many other things started happening that affected the dynamics, which I can't really go into. But my point of the story here is that if we can just hold in there, even though it looks like there's no way it can ever work out, just like Apostle Paul did in 2 Corinthians, when he went to Asia, he he was the smartest guy in the New Testament, and he couldn't figure out how to get through this situation in Asia because he said, I am marked to die. Okay? And some theologians say that they say that he was thinking even suicide. Now, I don't know. I've tried to see that. I can't dig that out, but I can get that, because of the emotional trauma that he was going through, and I can see because of his mental intellect how he could be overwhelmed to that place that he could think that. Does that make sense? And he said all of this happened to cause me to totally rely on God instead of his brilliance, his intellect. And God needed his smarts, but he needed him to trust him so he could engage his smarts. Does that make sense? Yep. God needs you for all the different tasks that you don't even have a clue what those tasks are. He needs you to do that. Wherever you're at in the scheme of things, on the ladder of things, he needs you in all those places that maybe nobody else can get to. And he's got a plan to work through you. That is your purpose. I like what Viktor Frankl said, that in his Man's Search for Meaning, that he said that if every person understood that they had meaning, that they had something to live for, even it doesn't have to be a big thing. It could be anything to live for. That meaning helped them to live because they had a value, had a purpose. And you have that, and all of you do. Now, sometimes when you're beat up emotionally, you can lose that. And we go into that sabotage mode and we want to shut down. But those are the times that seem really bad. But as you said, I think you said that you were the happiest that you've been, even after you've gone through the trauma. And I have said I wouldn't want anybody to have to go through some of the things I've gone through, just as you would have said that. But I wouldn't give up what I learned. Now, I don't know that I want to do it again, all right, but I don't want to give up what I got out of it. Does that make sense? So, one of the things that I want to talk about tonight is H.A.L.T, and we've talked about it in the past, and we're just going to touch on it tonight. We're going to watch a video here in a minute, and I thought we'd watch the video, and then we would, and then we'll maybe dig down into it next week. Might solicit Angie to do the reading next week. How about that? And but H.A.L.T is hunger, anger, loneliness, and tiredness. When we get angry or hungry, hunger affects us not only because we're hungry, but it chemically affects how we think. Now, we don't often understand the chemical dynamics. You were taking those pills and you didn't realize that chemically how they affected your thinking until you got to thinking about your thinking, right? And that's really important. Yeah, and the fact they may have been helping you in one area, okay, but then they may have not been helping you in another area. And see, and that's the way medication is, because it's not specific. But you know what? Soon they're coming out. They're going to be coming out. I listened to some new information this week. They are going to individually start printing with 3D printers. This is in the future, but print medication specifically for each individual one of these days. And I think that's pretty interesting. And they're going to be doing a lot of other things. And it's coming, and it's coming pretty quick. But back to H.A.L.T. So being hungry, maybe you don't realize it, that hunger affects your emotional stability. But other people around you may notice it, and you may notice it about others, right? Somebody's looking at in the back of the room, but be careful about that. And so you need it's called hangry. It is. That's a new term. I put that on Facebook one time, and somebody corrected my spelling, and so huh? Maybe. But we can be hungry, and they'll talk about this, and we'll talk about it next week. But we can be hungry not only in the physical realm, but that's important. But probably what's more important, and what sets up a lot of addictive scenarios in our lives, is the emotional hunger that we have. Okay, and so being angry, and that man, that is a whole nother addiction that we use as a way of trying to survive, and also make us feel powerful and help us feel less insecure, and we use that, and so maybe we've been taught that we aren't supposed to be angry, but the point that I want to get out, I'm going to touch it now. We'll talk more about it again next week, and that is, we have to learn ways to deal with our anger in a healthy way. We have to deal with it. Suppressing it is not dealing with it. That only internalize it. And when you internalize that negative, emotional dynamite inside of you, it causes mental, emotional, and physical effects.
But is anger a real emotion, or is it a secondary? Doesn't it just cover up the real emotion?
It's real.
Well,
No, listen, Zach. You use anger to cover up the real.
and
It may be easier to be angry than to acknowledge your hurt.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
You can be two things at one time.
well, yes, you can have several emotions, but, and we haven't talked about this in a long time. See, there's only two primary emotions, okay, and that's love and fear, okay, and anger is a part of that fear aspect, okay, and so there's only two primary emotions, and so but anger is it's not all bad, okay. In fact, in Ephesians 2, I want to say 2:6, but I'm not sure. It says, "Be angry, but sin not." Okay, and that means that we have anger is healthy as a way of saying that I have, my boundaries have been encroached, and so we have to take action. It's an action signal. The trouble is, we distort that, okay, and oftentimes we'll either suppress it or exaggerate it, and both of them affect you, right? Now, and so what we have to do is learn how to use it in a healthy way, and that's some things that we'll talk about next week, of finding ways to do that. And see, when you master your emotions, okay, then they don't control you, then you're controlling them. And you can use them to help you in your situation, because they're actually, our emotions are gifts to help us, okay? But the trouble is, most of the time, they're pushing us around because we've trained them or gave them permission, okay? And we did that because at different places in our life, those were we found out they were survival mechanisms to survive. And what worked when we were, let's say, when what worked when we were younger and helped us to survive may really work against us. I just scan, and whether
Anger be an action, and in my experience, anger and action should never go together.
well
Ever.
but that's because I better not talk about you, and so and so we're not going to get to this video if I'm not careful. But it's there, and we're supposed to use it in a healthy way, which would be a healthy action. Okay, instead of it pushing us around, that we're able to use it to help us in healthy ways. But to get to that place, you may have to first learn how to deal with the unhealthy effects of anger. And the first step is being aware, and then taking action. In fact, this was my opening statement that I didn't open with. This is the key of maintaining a life in recovery is a combination of self-care and self-aware. So that was my hook that I didn't lead with. So self-care and self-aware, and so here we are dealing with anger, and then loneliness. Loneliness is a human biological need, feeling that what's a need is to feel that you belong. Okay, and so that's a human need, and so we have to have that connection. All right. In fact, God created us for relationship with Him and relationship with others. Now, some of us would think, well, I'd be all right. It was just me and him. Well, maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. As antisociable as you are, I don't know if you can get along with God. I didn't. You have your hand up. I don't know if are you confessing or. Yeah. Again, no. It was messed up from the get-go. But we'll talk more about it hopefully next week if, what can I say, right? There are, I think, 6 human needs, and one of them is belonging. Maslow talked about that is a survival need, because without that you don't. That is to be really able to survive. And back in the 400s or 500s, in fact, I think that's in this video that's coming up. There was a king that did a test on babies and told them that he wanted to know what language they'd speak if they'd never heard anybody speak. Okay, this is 400 or 500. Okay, and so he gave them strict instructions. They were to bathe them, take care of them, but they weren't to love them, care for them, or talk to them, because he wanted to see how they'd turn out. And so what happened was he never found out, because all the babies died because they developed a lack of thrive syndrome. They weren't able to survive because they didn't have that bonding. And a lot of I'm going to say this, throw this out there. I believe this to be true. And Dr. Gabriel Mata talks along this line. Close to that. It's not Gabriel, though. It's Gabor. That's it. Gabor Mata. He talks along this line also, and that is that this issue of not feeling abandoned in either in infancy or childhood causes people to not develop the neural networks that you need to have to survive in life, and it alters your perspectives in life, and you have emotional pain because of all these things, and because you have emotional pain, then you seek out behaviors and or substances to try to manage that pain. Does that make sense? Some people call that mental sickness or mental disease or mental impairment, which it is mental impairment, right? It's disorders of thought because we didn't have the bonding that we needed. And all of us probably to some degree had that issue, but some more than others. Does that make sense? I remember a lady that I talked with many years ago. She remembered being in, and this was not in America. She was actually from a different country. She said she remembered being in the nursery when she was an infant, and her parents were behind the glass wall and feeling abandoned. And this was when she was an infant, before really the ability. But she had that memory of being abandoned and separated. I don't know how do you think that's going to affect you in life? That's all right. That's a good response. Okay, lonely. Do I need to continue on the need for that? Did I stir up enough there? Well, what's the answer? Okay, the answer is if we can be aware of this problem, then we need to seek out connections. That's what meetings are about. Okay, that's being connected with people, building relationships, friendships. Okay, even if it's friendship. Okay, even if it's one, those are significant. And even when we're talking about in step 4, step 5 about one person, connecting with one person, you're laying your stuff open to them. You're trusting one person, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal. Because reality is probably we don't disclose everything because we'll tell some of the secrets, but we don't tell all of those secrets. And of course, we're as sick as our secrets, right? So to the better that we can be open and be connected, I think the healthier we are. I know it's hard and it's scary. And our tendency is to run and hide. And I was wanting to talk about, out of the tools book tonight, tool number 1 about some of our survival skill is to avoid pain and seek pleasure, okay, which is our normal human mechanism of survival. And so we try to avoid pain, things that are hard and scary. We don't want to do that. But the fact of it is, we have to address the pain. We have to push through that pain. In fact, if we can let our pain and fear guide us and we head towards that, we'll be much healthier. Instead of running and hiding from it because it chases you.
My motivation for asking about belonging is I have times when I feel like I don't belong anywhere. And I know that that isn't true, and that isn't reality, but I still feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I have to watch for is that I start withdrawing and isolating
Mm-hmm.
because I don't really feel like anybody gets me.
Right.
And I'm responsible for how much somebody gets me because it's how much I allow them to know me.
Right.
But we go hide. We don't realize we're doing it until we're usually already there.
Yes.
And sometimes, if something
Right.
preemptive strike because that hurts work less. You know, but
At least that's what we think.
yeah, we think it hurts less, but you know, we're just doing that to ourselves. So, you know, the belonging thing, that's what my question was.
Right.
Because
And see, and those are all your eternal thoughts. It's that's your toxic story that you tell yourself. And when you're hurting, your toxic story is more active. How about that terminology? And you don't think that they get you, but the reality is there are some that get you more than you know that they get you. And oftentimes, they can see it before you see it, which is the reality, but we don't want it to be that way. I had a boss tell me one time, actually he was the pastor of the church, he told me, because I realized I needed to do things before he asked me. I had to kind of read his mind. And I was doing that pretty good. And then he told me, he asked me how I knew how to do that, and I said, well, because I had learned I had to read your mind. He told me to stop reading his mind. So then I had to act like I wasn't reading his mind, but I still, because he wanted you to have whatever he wanted you to have before he asked. So you had to read the mind, which is a whole different story. I don't know how come I got onto that. So let's go to the next, tired, okay? We get tired. When we get tired, and I'm not very good at this, okay? All right? They say you need 7 to 9 hours sleep. That's what they say, okay? And that is not my normal, okay? And it's, but I don't know. I don't know for sure if that's not. I mean, that's not what I normally do. But I'm just saying that's my struggle. I struggle with that. Okay, all right, and average person, which we don't know what that is, and so, but you know, but I know that I resent sleep. Okay, and so I feel like it's a waste of time sleep. But I know you have to do some. But so I'm just telling you right up front, I'm not very good at this, but I think that I manage myself. I'm better than I used to be. Okay, not as good as maybe I will be in the future. Okay, all right. So. Yeah, yeah. I'm inflicting. And so what we need to do, and I have. Speaking about this, I have learned that I have to give myself recovery time, okay? Because I like what Dr. Tal Ben Shahar says. He says it's not stress that kills us, it's the lack of recovery. And probably 25 plus years ago, I was teaching a class on divorce recovery, and they were talking about part of emotional healing is going through the cycle, and part of that cycle is depression. And we all hate depression. But they were talking about that, and I realized that depression is part of the healing cycle, and that I needed to not fight it. I needed to work with it. And I found, this is just my experiment, talking about tired there, okay, that I learned that if I allowed myself recovery time, mental, emotional, and physical recovery time, then I did better. I was less sick, okay, all right? And I'm a hard head, yes, I know y'all smiling about that, and I remember because in my earlier days, and I'm not much different now, but I worked 7 days a week, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, maybe more. And I remember telling myself, boy, I wish I could just get sick, then I would have some time off, because then I could feel like it'd be okay to have some time off if I was sick. So like I needed illness to give me permission to be ill. I thought that thought. I know it's an ignorant thought, but I'm in the hot seat. So, and my wife wanted, she arranged a trip for me to go. Hi. Hi, Linda. I'm talking about you. She loves it when I talk about her. Sarcasm. Anyway, she made arrangements for me to go on this hunting trip, which I don't go hunting, but she set me up. She bought me a bow, and I practice with it. But anyway, to make a long story short, I went on this trip, and I got sick on the trip. Okay, it worked. Yeah, yeah. But and I thought when I was sick on this trip, I thought I did this to myself, right? Why did I do this to me? That'd be a good question to ask you, right? Why did you do whatever you got going on? Oh, that's too much, isn't it? Is that too much? But maybe you ought to ask yourself that question. So, do what? It is healthy. So anyway, to the tired issue, tiredness can affect you, and I have rattled on quite a while. And we'll post the video. Okay, we'll post the video on YouTube and on Facebook, and so you can take a look at it. Maybe I'll show it here in the meeting next week. Maybe I won't, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. It's good, and everybody can go watch it that wants to watch it. But we may watch it. We may slow it down. I like to take pieces of it. But so anyway, these are tools. Tools work if you use them, if you work them. Okay, and tools don't work if you just keep them on the shelf. Okay? You got to take them off the shelf. You have to practice them. You may not be very effective with the tools right off the bat, but if you practice with them, they'll get better.
So it's not just getting a hammer?
It is not. You can, yeah. You can buy, you can buy the tool, but the tool doesn't work for you. Tools are to help you. Okay, it's easier to use a hammer than it is a rock or something else, your fist. All right, but this is a good tool. I recommend that you look at this, read this information I got in the back. We'll plan on hitting it again next week. Hopefully this was beneficial. Any questions from anybody?
Only sarcasm, so we can just...
Okay. Anybody get a big idea? Any big ideas?
You know my frustration with narcolepsy now.
May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you and give you his peace. Amen? Amen. Receive that. He wants you to have it. It behooves you to accept it. Yes, always make healthy choices.